Welcome to the Education Marketing Leader podcast with Chris Raposo. If you're looking to dive into the latest industry insights, draw inspiration from education success stories, or just want to sharpen your marketing skills, you're in the right place. Here, we bring you a diverse range of voices from experts and leaders in the field, offering you a unique blend of professional development and practical strategies. Whether you want to understand your audience better, stay updated with the latest tech trends in marketing, or expand your professional network, we've got you covered. So while you're driving on your morning commute or winding down after a busy day, let's explore the dynamic world of education marketing together.
What is one important lesson that you've learned about website personalization that makes for a successful website personalization experience?
I mentioned that my advice was to start small, but no matter how small you start, you have to be thoughtful. So I would not just kind of download a couple of stock photos and I'm saying, okay, now I'm trying out different photos to see what works, or I'm creating different calls to action, and I'm just going to have ChatGPT write all of this. So even if you start small by just maybe one or two personas, like we talked about, you have to still put a lot of thought into it, because otherwise it's just random. So try to understand who that particular persona is. Put yourself in their shoes. Maybe even observe somebody who volunteers that falls into this persona, navigate your website, and really understand what resonates with them. So yeah, even if you start small, that's totally fine, and you should, but be very, very intentional about what you're doing, about the content that you're delivering.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Education Marketing Leader. Today I have a special episode. It is not only the final episode of 2023, but it is also with a person that I directly work with. It's with my boss, Kat Liendgens, the CEO of Hannon Hill. Kat, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. And most of all, congratulations on 52 episodes in 52 weeks. That is incredible. What an amazing accomplishment. And how is that for consistency? That is not an easy thing to pull off, especially when you're embracing a medium that you hadn't before. So congratulations to you and hats off.
Thank you very much. I encourage everybody to, if they want to build something, to build in public. At the beginning of the year, I told Kat that I was embarking on this journey of having 52 episodes in 52 weeks, me only knowing maybe 5 marketers that would agree to be on the show. And her response was one word: easy. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? Because now my boss is watching, and I want to make sure that I look like the kind of guy who starts something and can finish it. So that was in the back of my mind the entire year. So, and Kat did a good job feeding me some guests as well at the beginning. So that helped out tremendously. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So usually I do background, I check LinkedIn on the experiences of my guests, but we work closely together, so I know a little bit about you, about your background, about your experiences. I know that you have a major in English and a master's degree in information technology, and you also served as the associate dean at the American International or Intercontinental University, but then you eventually ended up at Hannon Hill in 2009, where you were the COO, Chief Operating Officer, and the Professional Services Manager, which opened up an opportunity to lead the company as CEO in 2011. But there's always a journey that's behind that, right? You look at the resume, it's like, okay, there's a couple of steps here and there, but how'd you get to that point? How'd you end up at Hannon Hill?
It's a long story. So as you know, I was born and raised in Germany. So it's just kind of funny. It's like two Germans walk into a podcast. But I came to the States a few decades ago, actually, and I've been in the technology space for a long time, since the late 90s in various roles, including, as you mentioned, Associate Dean of IT. I was the IT manager, just worked in many different spaces, including higher ed, nonprofit, government. And so I started at Hannon Hill in 2009 as a professional services manager, and then got into the COO role, and then into the CEO role. Before I came to Hannon Hill, I was a big fan, and I just wanted to work for the company. So I just applied to different jobs there, and it worked out perfectly. And one of the things that I always believe is that when you work for the right place, then you don't have to worry about the next steps and constantly think about next steps, because you can just trust that good work will be rewarded. And hopefully that was the case, and they haven't regretted it since. But yeah, I've been in the CEO role now since 2011, and enjoying it. Love working with my team, and I love working with higher ed because I just so much admire what they do, all the great research that they do, the minds that they educate to shape the world. And that's been an absolute pleasure.
Very good. I love hearing about that backstory as well, because I haven't dug into that too much with you while I work there. Usually when we're at work, we're about getting things done for our clients. So the personal stuff, especially on my side, I'm always like super business oriented when I'm in the office. So kind of like having this conversation right here on the air on our day off to share some insights for the audience on where you came from and what makes you so committed to the higher ed industry. So, but one thing you frequently presented on, and we briefly touched on it during our webinar on the enrollment cliff, is website personalization. And this is what the topic is going to be about today.
Mhm.
So since Hannon Hill has a website personalization tool called Clive, we're going to talk about website personalization, but this is not going to be an advertising show about Clive, but about the benefits that website personalization brings to higher ed institutions' websites. So let's dive into that. If somebody doesn't know what web personalization means, can you give a brief overview of what it means, how it's relevant in the context of a higher ed website?
Yes, of course. So in a nutshell, web personalization is a technique that is used to essentially enhance the delivery of web content and improve the overall user experience through customization. So that could involve tailoring the content itself, or the layout of web pages, or even the functionality of the website in order to meet a specific visitor, so even a group of visitors' specific needs and preferences. So the goal of web personalization is to increase user engagement, satisfaction, and then, of course, ultimately, the goal is to increase conversion rates by constantly providing a relevant and personalized online experience. So that's just generally what web personalization is. Now, how it's relevant to higher ed, there are a number of different reasons why it's becoming more and more relevant. One, personalization is no longer just a nice to have. It's more of an expectation, because we get personalized experiences everywhere, as I'm sure you've experienced. So we go to a hotel room and the TV's on and we see our name right there on the screen. We get email promotions constantly that are personalized. The obvious examples that everybody mentions are Netflix and Amazon, where you have recommendations based on your interest and previous purchases. And so we've really come to expect personalization in so many aspects of our lives. And the truth of the matter is that most consumers actually only interact with brands these days if they provide this customized, personalized experience.
Mhm.
So for higher ed, it's shown that if prospective students had, or if students had that personalized experience in their recruiting process, they're more likely to enroll. While they're enrolled, they're more likely to engage with the university or college. And even after graduation, they're more likely to donate, and donate more frequently. So that's relevant just from a revenue standpoint, and from an expectation standpoint as well. And personalization now, we've talked about the enrollment cliff, as you mentioned, is becoming even more important because we have this looming demographic enrollment cliff. So the number of high school graduates that are college bound is depleting, is decreasing. So what higher education does in order to mitigate this trend is to appeal to a broader demographic. So we're looking at recruiting older demographics, international students, veterans and military is a big focus right now. So just to provide you a super simple example, if you're looking to appeal to a busy professional who would maybe be interested in an online program, showing pictures on your site of the dorms might not be as effective, right? So you want to always deliver the most relevant content to the individual. So in order to attract the right audience, you really need to show them content that demonstrates that they belong, that you understand their needs, that you understand their fears, their challenges. And so one of the most effective ways to accomplish this is through the technique of personalization.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said there with keeping current students engaged, because when I think about website personalization, I'm thinking about it from a sales perspective to get people through the door, right? That's my top of mind thing. How do I get people to sign up for our services? How do I get people enrolled in our institution? And then I'm not thinking about, well, retention is just as important as acquisition, because especially with the demographic enrollment cliff, once they get on your campus, you want to make sure they get the experience that they sign up for. And how do you provide that? You provide that through events that are relevant to them, and or counselors if they need a counselor, for example. How are they going to find that when they go on their website, right? If the website knows them, whether it's implicitly or explicitly, you'll be able to give them that content that they're looking for at the moment's notice when they show up on your website. Some people may be in distress mentally. There's a lot of mental health stuff going on, especially after COVID. So these are situations and moments where it's really important to give somebody what they need right away without them having to go dig through 20 different pages to find it. So definitely something there with web personalization that makes it relevant to tailor that content that they need at the time that they need it.
Yeah, no, and you actually mentioned COVID, and this was a great preview of what to expect with the demographic enrollment cliff as well. As you mentioned, we talked about you can't recruit yourself out of this enrollment cliff, right? So retention is just as important, and this is a situation that first became very, very obvious during COVID, where all of a sudden universities were struggling to deliver relevant content to current students to make sure, hey, we haven't forgotten about you either, right? And so that's where we sort of witnessed the emergence of personalization techniques. So you only have one homepage, but you can use personalization in order to tailor content to prospective students, to current students, and really any other persona that you're targeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also important to have that tool on different pages, right? Not just on the homepage. Like, let's say I've heard this during a conversation with one of our partners from Vision Point Marketing, Matt Hatzberger, who said when you have a targeted ad somewhere, these people on LinkedIn or whatever, they click on it, they get to a landing page. Now that landing page becomes their homepage because they end up there, right? They're not going to end up on the HannonHill.com homepage. They end up on a Cascade CMS page, for example, right? And that becomes their homepage, and then they navigate from there. But so it's very important to put on that landing page or whatever their homepage is that they arrive on your website on, that is also tailored to what they need. Because, like as we know, if somebody can't find something within a couple of split seconds, they'll go somewhere else. Now, there's also things about analytics, data collection. You want to make sure that you follow the data and you know where people are coming from and where they're going. Can you explain, or is it possible through web personalization to utilize the data to personalize a website without compromising privacy? Everything is about these days, and even before, people are weary about, am I being watched? Is my information being used to potentially harm me?
Yeah, so personalization a lot of times has this stigma of being very invasive, just asking users for a lot of their data and being a little bit creepy, but it doesn't have to be that way at all. In fact, personalization can be easily provided without asking for any personal data at all. So geolocation is a good example of this, because again, the visitor doesn't have to do anything. A tool can easily identify where this visitor is currently located and display personalized information accordingly. I'm going to give you an example here in a second. You can also personalize content based on behavior on your website. So whether that's specific page views, if somebody looked at a specific program, or the date and time of their last visit, or even search terms that somebody used on their site. So all of this does not require your visitor to relinquish any type of information at all. But you can also encourage your website visitors to essentially categorize themselves as a specific type of visitor. And you can do this with just a simple drop down. If they want to optimize their web experience. Again, that's an opt-in. They can still get that vanilla experience if they so choose, or they can select the persona for which they want to experience your website. And again, I still have not collected any information, any personal information at all, but I can completely customize the entire web experience. And then also keep in mind that when it comes to providing personal data, it oftentimes is the case that users are more than happy to trade some level of personal information in order to get something of value in return, right? So a good example here is one of our clients, Ontario Tech. They have this digital view book. So prospective students can get their customized digital view book. They can get the vanilla experience. But if they want a highly customized view book that is tailored to their interest, all they have to do is fill out a form. And that form is going to look exactly at what this particular student is interested in. And it generates this beautiful digital view book. That data could be used elsewhere now on their website to deliver this targeted content. But again, there's a trade-off. So you can give your user the choice to get a generic experience or to provide just a little bit of personal information to get an enhanced experience. In terms of working with different tools, obviously you want to work with vendors who can delete user information upon request if necessary. That's basic GDPR.
Yeah.
And so another tip that you might want to consider is, be transparent about what you deliver. So it's a really good idea sometimes to say, by the way, this piece of content was personalized to your needs based on this particular factor. And then you can have your user opt in or out of that experience.
Yeah, that's always the thing, with that. Giving up a little bit of your personal information to receive that tailored content. It's like if there's something I need to know about my major, be that journalism at the University of Florida, I want to know what's happening there. Are there going to be any talks from expert journalists from the New York Times or Washington Post that I can learn from? I would miss that if I wouldn't have subscribed or given a little bit of that information of my preference. You're getting that through the website on your university page. So that's these little things that you give, but you get so much in return that I think is well worth that little bit of privacy giveaway. But that's just me. I mean, I have nothing to hide, so I'm not too worried about it. Have you noticed any challenges that universities face when they try to implement personalization? How have they overcome those challenges?
Yeah, we actually asked this question in, I think it was the webinar on the enrollment cliff, and we talked about personalization and how it can mitigate some of the challenges with the cliff. And so based on the answers that our participants provided, one of the biggest challenges really was related to resources. And I don't mean just resources in terms of tools, because there are tools out there right now, and a lot of them are not super, super expensive. But more in terms of just time and having the staff and having the knowledge That's definitely something that that has potentially been a challenge. Just proving ROI. A lot of times, we live in an instant gratification kind of world, and people want to see the positive ROI right away. And a lot of marketers also are just afraid to get started because they feel like, if I get started with personalization, oh no, now I have to create 20 different, 50 different versions of each type of content that I have in order to cater my content to those different segments of my audience. And so my advice, as it often is to start with small experiments. You don't have to start with 20 different versions to see positive results on personalization. Start with something very simple like images or calls to action that don't require a lot of content writing. Or start with just small snippets of content. Obviously, you have to take your baseline data, compare it, and after a few months, you'll see whether it's worth a further investment. But another thing that I often recommend to our higher ed customers, especially if there is a little bit of a reluctance or skepticism or maybe a risk averseness, if we embrace this personalization, if we do this experiment, are we potentially losing out on, a prospective student converting? So the little tip that I'd like to give is start out with the persona that's the hardest to convert or that's really challenging to convert, right? So let's say that your college or university has had a really, really rough time recruiting, I'm just making this up, business students, prospective business students from Nigeria, right? So you've not seen that success. Well, what a perfect opportunity to try out some personalization, to tailor content specifically to students in Nigeria. You can use the geolocation for this. And Chris, you and I both know, as former international students, there is a massive fear of being isolated, of not knowing what's going on if you enter this brand new culture and this, new university, you don't know anybody. And so that's a low-hanging fruit right there. You can have welcome messages tailored to specific countries. And again, start with some of the demographics that are the hardest to convert. And if you can show that, oh, we had no conversions before this, and now we actually have, 5, 10 applications from this particular group, that is a huge win, and that can build momentum and that can build support.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that what you just said with the welcome message for the international students. Coming here from Germany, not knowing the language too well, and then enrolling at a communication school, I thought to myself, am I able to make it through the program with English as my second language, going to a communication school? That seemed very, very hard at the time before I enrolled. So having student success stories, for example, tailored to these international students from people that are from Nigeria who went through the program, who were successful, to showcase that it is possible if you put a little bit of work into it, that really encourages and gives these prospective students hope that there may be a place for them at a particular institution. So I like that as well. They don't have to go fishing for it because you don't know what you don't know. So if you show up on that university website, you may look for a business program, but you don't know that you should look for student testimonials if this is your first time there. But if you tailor those student testimonials to them, then they're going to be like, wow, okay, so I'm not the first one who's doing this. This can be done.
Absolutely. And, if you are an international student from Germany, for example, yes, you look at the programs, but, you don't even think to look at, is there a German club or something like this, right? So if you automatically fed this type of information, automatically it becomes a much more inclusive and much more encouraging environment.
Yes. So when I went to the University of Florida, they actually had a German Stammtisch. There was a student group that met on campus, but also online. So they had a Facebook group, and I joined them. So that was kind of cool to see that. And the word Stammtisch alone is already it builds that trust because it's a word that only Germans would know.
Yeah.
Let's talk emerging trends. There's a lot going on, especially in tech with AI. But besides AI, what are some emerging trends in web personalization that higher ed marketers should be aware of?
Yeah, of course. We can't ignore AI, and I think AI will actually play a huge part in personalization. And that is a big trend to kind of merge those two. So, there are things in personalization that could be automated using AI, like suggested content or suggested links. Um, and again, that goes back to the fact that you don't want people to have to search for things. The more you can eliminate the search bar experience, the better off your audience is. Obviously, chatbots they're getting they're getting scarily sophisticated, and they really are a great opportunity to help, especially international students. Speaking of which, again, to find the information that you're looking for when nobody at the university is monitoring the chat because they're in different time zones, obviously. And chatbots can also easily deliver content in different languages, which is of course is another advantage. And I can see AI eventually being used to adjust content to different reading levels. And we've talked about this before. A lot of times, especially when you broaden the pool of your content contributors, higher education professionals tend to write for other higher education professionals, maybe not so much for somebody who is about to graduate high school. So the ability to allow the website to automatically adjust the reading level based on what you know about a visitor and adjust that on the fly, I can see there being a huge impact that AI could have, or even do on-the-fly translations. So I think the AI is making tremendous progress with translation. And another AI aspect of personalization is just analytics. The AI does a phenomenal job just parsing through vast amounts of data and seeing patterns where humans might not easily see them. So AI will be able to tell you, hey, you're catering this to this particular persona, but they're not really coming to your site. Or here's a gap that you're seeing. You're missing out on this type of persona, and even make content suggestions for you to create. So I think all of those are emerging trends that we'll see, and tools that will be able to take your personalization to the next level.
Yeah, talking about translation, not that it has much to do with a personalization tool, but I've compared Google Translate to ChatGPT Translate, and I wrote a piece in English, and it was a deep, meaningful piece that my family wanted translated. They were like, "Oh, what is this? What did you write about here? Can you translate it for me?" And I put it into ChatGPT and I asked it to translate it for me, and it was spot on, word for word, but not word for word, but context to context, amazingly accurate, better than I could have written it in German.
Yeah.
I was like, holy cow, this is amazing. In comparison to what Google Translate sometimes produces, that is word for word, and that is not always accurate and contextual. So highly recommend anybody wanting to maybe translate their program pages from one language to another. Of course, you want to have a native speaker review that, but ChatGPT, use an ad for that is incredible, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I highly recommend it. I've used it before myself.
So let's say institution listening, somebody higher ed marketer wanting to begin to explore web personalization. What initial steps would you recommend for a successful implementation?
Yeah. Well, I think most of the advice that you read about or hear about is based on common sense. So, if you don't have your initial data as a baseline, you can't measure if your personalization is paying off. So start with the data that you have, set some goals that you would like to accomplish, and then really, develop and formulate an in-depth understanding of your audience. That's all normal, standard, good advice. But I think what happens is that we talked about starting small, and I think that a lot of times we fall into this trap of even if we start small, we're still thinking, how do we scale this up? And I don't think that that's the way to go, because you just want those small wins at first, right? So again, start with small images with calls to action. Again, start with personalization that doesn't require a lot of guesswork. So geolocation is really clear cut because the visitor doesn't have to provide anything. Consider this drop-down box to let your visitor categorize themselves. Start with the problem demographics that I was talking about so that you can actually get that traction right away and you can combat some of the skepticism that you might encounter.
So just curious, how long have you been working with web personalization and how long have you been educating yourself on website personalization?
A long time. At Hannon Hill, we started working on website personalization tools like Clive 7+ years ago. We've been doing a lot of research, and this was before higher ed even had it on the radar, because we knew that the time would come where personalization would be an expectation, and we knew that it would be able to help higher education websites catapult themselves to the next level. So it's been a long time.
Yeah, 7 years. So within those 7 years, what is one important lesson that you've learned about website personalization that makes for a successful website personalization experience?
I mentioned that my advice was to start small, but no matter how small you start, you have to be thoughtful. So I would not just kind of download a couple of stock photos and I'm saying, okay, and now I'm trying out different photos to see what works, or I'm creating different calls to action, and I'm just going to have ChatGPT write all of this. So even if you start small by just maybe one or two personas, like we talked about, you have to still put a lot of thought into it, because otherwise it's just random. So try to understand who that particular persona is, put yourself in their shoes. Maybe even observe somebody who volunteers that falls into this persona, navigate your website, and really understand what resonates with them. So yeah, even if you start small, that's totally fine, and you should, but be very, very intentional about what you're doing, about the content that you're delivering.
Yeah, intentionality is key when it comes to websites or content strategies. This brings the episode to a close. Very rich episode. I learned a lot. I'm sure our audience learned a lot as well. If they want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
So the easiest way is my email. I'm pretty neurotic about my inbox. So I will definitely answer. So my email address is very, very, very simple. It's just kat, K-A-T, @hannonhill.com. Or you can just connect with me on LinkedIn, Kat Liendgens, and I'll be happy to chat further with anybody who likes to have a conversation about higher ed, about personalization, or anything else.
Perfect. I'll be sure to tag you in the LinkedIn recap post along with the full episode. Kat, thank you so much for being part of the show. Last episode of the year. Thank you for all your support this year with this podcast. I wish everybody a happy new year, and I wish you a happy new year.
Thank you so much, Chris. Congratulations again, and happy holidays, happy new year, and I'll see you soon.
Take care. Hey, thanks so much for tuning into the show today. If you enjoyed it, don't keep it to yourself. Share with your friends in your network. And if you have a moment, I would really appreciate a review of the podcast. That'll help other people find the show as well. Tune in every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. when I release another episode. Take care now. Have a good one, friends.